Hi, my name is Hannah. Welcome back to my channel. I'm excited to talk about some of the books that I read the past couple weeks, so let's just jump into that. So I read a strange book that is, perfectly seasonal for October. I read the book Hold Me Closer, Necromancer by Lish McBride. And this is not something I would typically pick up, but I saw my Aunt Jen really liked it, so had to pick this one up. So this follows our main character Sam, and he lives a pretty normal life, nothing too crazy. Then when he catches the attention of an evil necromancer named Douglas, and I don't even know how to describe this book. So it is following Sam as he learns that he was actually a necromancer, and all these people he knew were kind of mythological creatures, were witches and werewolves and whatever else, and he gets thrown on this crazy adventure, followed around by his good friend he works with's severed, reanimated head. It's a strange one and kind of fun. Like, I ended up really enjoying it. It's bizarre, but kind of works in a corny, funny, but also kind of creepy Halloween sort of way. So I enjoyed this. It was very different than what I would normally read. I've read some books that would maybe fit into the horror or humor genre, but this was very much that horror, humor, supernatural genre, and not normally my cup of tea, but perfect for October. So I really enjoyed this. If you want to try something a little different, I think you might enjoy this one. So this next book ended up being rather delightful. So I read The Family Man by Eleanor Lippman, and this follows Henry and his ex-wife gets in contact with him because her current husband has just died. And in getting in contact with her, he decides he would like to reconnect with the daughter that he had for the 2 years that he was married to her. He's reconnecting with his daughter Talia, and the overly dramatic life she leads, and the dramatic life her mom leads, and the crazy schemes that they're getting into. And he's kind of reconnecting with that, and also trying to find forgiveness for his ex-wife for leaving him all those years ago, even though he is a gay man and it was all for the best in the end. He just still has those feelings of resentment, and I thought it was really sweet, just this like seeking for family and love, and kind of just gave me all the feel-good family feels at the same time, some funny dramatic scenes. So very much light, fluffy, but cute and adorable. So I enjoyed my time with this. So just a warning, this book I am going to kind of rant on it for a minute. So if you aren't interested, just skip ahead to the next one on the little timestamps. The next book I read, I have a lot of thoughts on, and I don't know if I'm the most qualified to give thoughts on it. So I read the book Brain Lock: Free Yourself from Obsessive Compulsive Behavior by Jeffrey M. Schwartz. And I didn't really like this book. So if you are looking for ways to deal with obsessive behavior or OCD, this comes up as one of the most recommended books. And it's got pretty good reviews on Goodreads. I mean, I give it like 2 stars. I didn't really enjoy it. Some of the reason that I didn't enjoy it is just, it is an older book. It's more than 20 years old, and it's got, I feel like, some outdated things. I wrote a giant list on my computer of things I didn't really like that I found to be unhelpful for me personally. So I didn't like that it used a lot of absolute words. It was like, people with OCD always feel this way or never feel this way, and I'm like, ugh. The whole book kind of felt like an infomercial of, look at the testimonials, our method will cure you. And I feel like that's a problem. You can't just promise that doing these 4 things are going to cure your OCD. Anyways, I thought that there was a lot of absolute language, which I feel like, as somebody who struggled with some similar things, that's not helpful, especially when things are difficult. I feel like the theory might be helpful in this book. The 4 things that you should do: you should relabel, reattribute, refocus, and revalue. That is what the book talks about, and it repeats that over and over and over again. And it's not to say that those things are necessarily wrong, but the way that they're presented, I just didn't feel like was helpful. I feel like maybe this book might be good if you know people who are struggling with OCD, or you have a child or a family member, maybe reading this to understand some cases of OCD and the thought process and maybe how to talk to them better. I think that those things might be good, but at the same time, I feel like for me personally, I found reading the stories to almost be a little triggering at points. It very much focuses on very classic forms of OCD, which is not to say that there aren't people who have those classic forms, but also, I mean, OCD can present in a lot of different ways, and this book very much focused on the hand washing, cleaning your house variety. Let's see what else. I really think you could read just kind of the first, they have like a little wrap up at the end of each chapter, and if you wanted to kind of understand this method, you could just read the wrap up at the end of the chapters and not read the entire chapters. There was a lot of talk about like, you should just work harder and then you'll be fine, and I feel like that's kind of a damaging mentality. I mean, a way to increase my anxiety to feel like if I'm not doing this perfectly, it's my fault and I should be working harder on it. There also were a few times that, and now the thing is, you might read this and think something completely different. It's just me hyper focusing on the certain things that I feel like weren't working for me. So, I mean, maybe this would be very helpful for you, but the things that my brain was picking out of it, I didn't really appreciate. It had a lot of the mentality of like, you should just work harder, and it's better for you and more meaningful for you if you can overcome your OCD without medication. And I know for me that is a mentality for my mental health issues that would have, I mean, like, could have killed me. Like, medication can be very necessary. I just feel like it's very toxic to say those kinds of things, because when I was at my most difficult points, all that would go through my head is, I'm not strong enough because I can't do this. I don't want medication, but I have no other option, and I'm just not good enough. And I feel like this book kind of reinforced those ideas. So I did not appreciate that. They did talk about religion and that God wants you to fight off the OCD, which, I mean, in some ways, I do think that, you know, prayer and religion can be helpful, but I also think that that can lead to scrupulosity, which is like religiously focused OCD, feeling like if I'm still having these thoughts, it's because God doesn't love me and I have to like compulsively pray about it or compulsively work through those issues. And I don't know if that's very helpful. I did mention in the book ERP, exposure response prevention, and I do think that that is a very helpful thing, but it definitely did not focus on it, where I think a lot of the treatments are like ERP and medication to help with OCD. So I don't really know. It just kind of skated over that pretty quickly toward the end of the book. Some of the steps themselves can be really good, but they can also be problems, and the book tried to acknowledge it, but when you constantly are saying, it's these 4 steps, do them over and over again, I mean, compulsively telling yourself that it's not me, it's my OCD, is a compulsion, it is a problem. Also, there is the step where you're refocusing, and refocusing your attention can be a really helpful tool, but I also feel like it can be a thing for avoidance, or instead of dealing with your problems, you just make yourself super busy, and that so that you don't have to think about them, and that's not a healthy mindset. So instead of sitting with the discomfort and learning how to accept uncertainty in your life, you're still finding other ways to control. And I feel like a lot of OCD, at least in my life, has been control issues and finding ways to be okay with less control, instead of saying I have to compulsively do these 4 steps in order to control my OCD. I don't know, I just didn't like the I didn't like the way that it was talked about. Like, there are a lot of things I feel like that could be useful for helping people with OCD or similar anxiety or obsession problems. Like, I think there are things that could be helpful from this book. I just feel like in reading it, it almost exacerbated some of my own problems just because it was so repetitive and a little triggering in parts. And so I don't want to speak for everyone on this book because I know it's helped a lot of people. I know for me personally, these were my issues with it. But I mean, I don't have the same mental health issues as the next person, so I don't know if I can blanketly say don't read this book, but I know that I wouldn't recommend it to anyone just knowing my own experiences. I just didn't really feel like this was useful. So I don't know. If you have read this book or other books that talk about dealing with mental health issues, have you felt them to be very helpful or harmful almost? And how do you deal with that? So I don't know. This is my huge rant on this book. I thought about it a lot and I just don't know. And it's not that, I mean, I'm just focusing on the parts I didn't like. It's not that there weren't good things in there. It's just that was what I couldn't stop thinking about after reading the book. So anyways, let me know what you think. Okay, so finally I'm going to talk about the book Highly Illogical Behavior by John Corey Whaley. And this is following our 16-year-old boy Solomon, who had a bit of a mental breakdown and ended up going home from school and staying there. And he is dealing with agoraphobia and doesn't want to leave. And then we have Lisa, who decides she wants to get into a really good psychology program, and she's going to do it by writing an essay where she cures somebody with a mental illness. So she tracks down Solomon and decides to be his friend, and her and her boyfriend befriend Solomon. And it's got all of the typical betrayal of trust and miscommunication tropes that you could get from this kind of YA novel. It talks a lot about agoraphobia, but I don't know like the accuracy with which it is portrayed, or I don't really know. It just kind of felt like it was a meh for me. It ended up being cutesy, but also formulaic. Just like nothing happened in it that I didn't pretty much expect from the beginning of the book. So it was kind of a meh for me on this one. And those are the books that I'm going to talk about in this video. I'm sorry for the long rant on the Brainlock book, but if you have thoughts on any of these books, please let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you all on the next one.